Welcome back. In this first chapter we will consider black's responses after move bishop c4, besides the main moves bishop c5 and knight f6, and also move bishop e7 will be considered in next chapter. So we start with the weakest moves. We start with move f5. This move is with the same idea like in the Latvian gambit, and the only trick is that white doesn't need to take the pawn on f5, because after e4 and next to d5, black will regain this pawn and he will control the center. So after f5, the best move for white is to play d4. And now black will face some serious problems, because, for example, if he plays move d6, knight g5, this is a typical reaction in gioco piano, and white threatens to play knight f7 and to take a rook or queen. So black's only move is knight h6 and now d5, attacking the knight and later creating a square for knight on e6. Knight b8, knight c3. There's no hurry to jump knight e6, although it was possible. Knight c3, so f4, knight e6, bishop takes e6, d takes e6, and here white is much better. His pawn on e6 looks terrible, and black has big problems where to put his king, and later white can play g3 to open up his bishop and also to open up f-file. He can castle, and he can also play moves like queen e2 and later castle longside, depends on what will black do, but white's advantage here is huge. So let's go back to move d4. Black can also take pawn on e4, and now knight takes e5. White again threatens knight f7, so black plays d5, bishop b5. White wants to take knight on c6, so black defends it, knight e7, castle. And if black doesn't do anything, white will play c4, knight c3, maybe later bishop g5, and create some more pressure on the pawn d5, and later also the pawn on e4 will be weak. So black needs to play a6, bishop takes x6, b takes c6. Now many moves are possible for white. One very strong move is c4, with the same idea, knight c3 and bishop g5. Later possible is also queen a4 to completely create pressure on the c6 pawn, but also instead of c4, the move f3 is also good, because white wants to open the f-file, and he wants to create pressure on the pawn on e4, later knight c3, and this queen can later be very dangerous, since black cannot move his knight yet from e7 because pawn on c6 is hanging. So probably on move d4, black's best move is e takes d4, and here white has a couple of options. One is to play knight g5 with the same idea of knight f7, but then black can play knight e5, bishop takes g8, rook takes g8, queen d4, and white is still better, but black is hoping to create some resistance with his bishop pair. So maybe the simplest decision is to take knight takes d4. And if black takes on e4, knight c6, b takes c6, and queen h5. White is winning the material, because g6, queen e5, and the rook on h8 is hanging. So black cannot take on e4, he needs to play something else, but the pawn on f5 will later be weak, and white wants to castle, and I think the main thing for white here is to develop his pieces, and he will have chances to win very quickly this game, because this king on e8 is very bad, because the bishop is preventing him from castling short, and yeah, this will not be easy position for black. So we've seen that f5 is not a good move. Also not a good move is knight d4, and actually this move sets up a little trick for white. After, in case white takes on e5, which is a mistake, black has chances to completely take over white. So knight e5 is a bad move. Instead, knight d4 should be played. E takes d4, and now white has many good options. The truth is that this position may occur from the Ruy Lopez variation with knight d4, but here white is tempo up, and even in that variation in Ruy Lopez, white is better, and he is just much better. c3 is possible, d takes c3, knight c3, d6, d4, and white's center is just powerful. He's well developed. He will later castle, play bishop e3 or bishop g5. Maybe he can put his queen on b3 to create pressure on f7 and b7. So this is very bad position for black. So bishop c4. Another move which black can play is the move h6. This move has been usually played by the black players who are afraid of knight g5 on move knight f6. So, but this is the only idea of move h6. White can castle, he can play d4, he can play even c3. These all moves are good, but let's start with the move castle. And now knight f6. If instead black plays bishop c5 and wants to enter the same position like in the main line, then c3, d6, d4, and we can see that he doesn't have time for do that, because after bishop b6, d takes e5, he will lose one of his pawns. So d takes e5, queen d8, knight takes d8, and knight e5. Otherwise, he's losing a pawn on f7. King d8, bishop f7. So after bishop c5, c3, d6, d4, the best for black is maybe to take on d4, but after c4, white obtains the control of the center, and he's much better. For example, bishop b6, knight c3, and well, white has a very good position. So instead of bishop c5, black can play knight f6, but then d4, and after e takes d4, rook e1 is possible, e5 is also possible, and here the only move for black is d5. And this leads to the d4 variation, but with, let's say, not a tempo up, because black has h6, but obviously white should be better here. Instead of e5, probably the safest option is rook e1. And now white is threatening e5, so black must play d6, knight takes d4, bishop e7, knight c3, and after castle h3, white stands better. We will consider this position in another line, and you will see why. So this is h6. Instead of h6, there is move g6, and this move is much better than the all three we've already seen. Black's idea is to play bishop g7, put his knight on f6 and castle, and this is a typical idea in Ruy Lopez, and white needs to be precise to gain advantage. So d4. Again, this move, this is as we've seen, typical move to obtain advantage. E takes d4. Now I think the black's idea is very good seen after knight d4, bishop g7. He already creates pressure on knight on d4, so white takes on c6, b takes c6, castle, knight e7. Now black even wants to play d5, so knight c3, castle, bishop e3. Both sides play developing moves, d6, queen d2, and bishop e6. And next move is queen d7 and rook b8, possibly later a5 or c5, and black's position is very solid, and it would not be easy for white to claim advantage. So instead of knight d4, we have here a very strong move for white, and this is c3. White invites black to take this pawn, and if black doesn't take this pawn, then white pawn will come to d4, and white will have a strong center. So first we will see what happens if black takes this pawn. D takes c3. Now white has two moves. He can take knight c3, and he can play, I think, better move, which is queen b3. If knight c3, he's setting a small trap for black, because after natural developing move bishop g7, white plays queen b3, attacking the pawn on f7, and black can only defend this pawn by playing queen e7, because move knight h6 is not possible because of bishop takes h6, so queen e7, and here very strong move knight d5, attacking queen on e7 and pawn on c7, and also sacrificing pawn on e4, so black has no better options than to take this pawn. Queen takes e4 and bishop e2. It may look like white has lost his initiative because he started to going back with his bishop, and the f7 square is no longer weak, but black has another problem in his camp, and that is the c7 square. White is immediately threatening to take the rook, and the only way black can defend this pawn is by playing king d8. And this may look like black still has a solid position because he's 2 pawns up, and white may not castle because his bishop is on e2 is hanging, but in fact that is not true. First I would like to mention that knight g5, one logical move, is mistake, attacking the queen on e4 and pawn on f7 because of the queen e2. King takes e2 and knight e4, and now black has again exchanged his queens in a very smart way, and he can hope to save this position. King d1, knight b3, knight f7, check, king e8 only move, knight takes h8 and knight takes h1, a1, and here the position is very unclear, and I think black should not be worse. So instead of knight g5, white has a very strong move, and this is castle. He is giving up his bishop on e2 in order to obtain a pressure over e file. And next move he wants to play rook e1 or bishop e5, bishop g5. Also he threatens to play knight g5. So the best thing for black is to take this bishop. Maybe not the best thing, but the only chance, because after knight e7, bishop g5, again he cannot take bishop on e2 because of the rook e1, and the knight on e7 will fall, and the later black king will also be in great danger. So castle, queen takes e2, bishop g5 check, f6, rook e1, and now white has a winning position. In case black returns with queen on a6, white can play queen e3, attacking the e8 square, but he also has a much direct winning. So on rook e1, black takes queen e1, rook e1, f takes g5, and he's hoping to defend this position because he has a rook and two pieces against queen, and he's hoping in a couple of moves to evacuate his king and to have a solid position. But unfortunately white has queen e3, threatening mate in 1, and black cannot defend the mate, and he's completely lost. So let's go back to knight takes c3. So we can conclude that bishop g7 is a mistake, and therefore black must find some smart move, and this is move d6, because now if white goes queen b3, then queen d7 is possible, and this queen cannot be attacked, and black threatens knight a5 to take a bishop. So on d6 white can castle, bishop g7, knight g5, knight h6, but it's not clear how white should proceed. He has definitely enough compensation for the pawn, but black is very solid. So instead of knight takes c3, we need to play queen b3, attacking the pawn on f7 immediately. And now black can play queen e7, but surprisingly he can also play knight h6, which looks like he's losing pawn on f7 immediately after bishop h6, bishop h6, bishop f7, king f8. But the things are not completely clear after knight c3, king g7, and later he will play rook f8, and with bishop pair he can hope to survive this game. So instead of taking on h6, white should play castle. And now if black plays bishop g7, then white can take on f7, king f8, knight c3, king g7, play e5 to obtain space, rook f8 and bishop d5. And later he can play rook e1, rook d1, and his advantage is huge. So on castle, it's really hard to give some advice for black, because if knight a5, queen c3, and now we see why we didn't want to take this pawn with knight, because rook on h8 is hanging and knight on a5 is also hanging. So instead of knight h6, black can play queen e7, and again here very strong move is castle. We don't want to play knight c3 because of knight a5, and now again black cannot play knight a5 because of queen c3, and if you place move like bishop g7, now we take knight c3, knight a5, queen a4, knight takes c4, queen c4. The pawn on c7 is hanging, so black can only defend it by playing 6-6, but now it's interesting for white to play move e5, preventing development on knight on g8, and also preventing black to play move the pawn. And white wants to play knight e4, bishop g5 or bishop f4, and black is in serious problems. He's pawn up, but he's lagging in development badly. So on c3, the best thing for black is to take this pawn. If he plays bishop g7, then white can take on d4, d6, castle, knight f6, d5. Now it makes no difference if black goes on e7 or knight b8. White continues with his plan. He's just developing his pieces. His position is he's better, yes, because he has a space advantage. He controls the center, and later he can play rook c1 and create pressure on this c7 pawn. So instead of bishop g7, the best move for black is d3. Black doesn't allow white to obtain a full center, and also the knight on b1 cannot be developed on square c3. Since white is not in a hurry to take this pawn, he can take it whenever he wants. white castles, bishop g7, and now bishop g5. This is important move because it's preventing black from setting up the ideal setup for him, which is knight f6, d6 and castle. Now knight f6 is just losing a piece after e5, and black cannot move his knight because he's pinned. So knight e7, now white takes queen d3, d6, knight b d2, castle, and here white has a couple of options to continue, and I think I like most move queen e3. This move prevents black from playing h6, and also he creates a safe squares for this bishop, because in case of knight a5, this bishop can return on d3 or even e2. White's next move should definitely be rook e1, rook a d1, and maybe if he is feeling optimistic, he can try with bishop h6 to create some attack on the king side. This is it for these lines. Thank you for watching us, and we shall continue next chapter.